Story 1. They would probably assume the police had the wrong person. I'm the kind of person who felt so guilty about sampling a grape from the bag that I went back and paid for the single grape to clear my conscience. Story 2. This actually happened to me. We borrowed a family friend's recreational vehicle, and I was in charge of driving for a while. The whole family was there, even more in a van behind us. We got pulled over because of a broken headlight. I got arrested for a warrant due to an unpaid traffic ticket and failure to appear in court from a couple of years ago. My family all thought I was mistaken for my brother. He's in prison now, so that makes sense. Story 3. Most likely for initiating something against a horrible hotel that destroyed public access to natural hot springs in order to force people to pay and use theirs instead. The Chinese consulate has a peace garden there, ironically. Story 4. I honestly don't know. My family has a weird thing where they know I never get into any trouble, but there's apparently some kind of vibe I give off like I could snap at any moment and do something insane. My dad always said that even though I was the good kid of the three, he was always worried about me the most. So they'd probably assume something really heinous, maybe politically driven since I talk about politics so much. I don't know. Story 5. Something violent, probably murder or manslaughter. Assault. I know this screams internet tough guy, but the last few years my sunny disposition has been replaced with anger, sadness, and apathy. Story 6. Street racing or street drifting. I'm 37 now and stopped building cars at 30 after ruining my back working on cars. I'm a 5'3", 110-pound girl, and I was always trying to prove I could do anything the boys could. It was not worth it, but I was a prolific street racer and I rolled with a crew of street drifters in my 20s. The scene is not great now anyway. At least where I live, it's all about that takeover nonsense. Those don't appeal to me whatsoever. I did freeway racing and mountain racing and drifting. I fancied myself to be like Wangan Midnight with my ultra-Japanese domestic market-styled Nissan 240SX and my imported Toyota Soarer. Story 7. India is pretty much on the path to becoming a dictatorship. And I am pretty vocal about the fascist government, so I would assume they are locking me up to shut me up. Story 8. Take your pick. Public intoxication. Donald Trump put a hit out on all journalists. Stalking Eddie Redmayne. Deploying pepper spray on the Los Angeles Metro because a crazy person tried to grab me. Story 9. My son answered fraud. Laughing. I'm insulted that, first, he thinks I'm dumb enough to get caught, and second, that I'd ever commit fraud when I've been teaching him honesty is the best policy his entire life and never lie, often to my own detriment. The jerk. Story 10. I had a bench warrant on me for many years, and it has nothing to land me in prison once due process. I still am arrestable on sight. My family and friends would be left to speculate. Story 11. Violated a traffic law by not hitting the gas hard the very second the light turned green. The fact that I check to make sure oncoming traffic from both directions isn't going to run their red light takes a whole 1.5 seconds, and apparently we are not supposed to do that anymore. Story 12. My family would assume unpaid parking tickets and that I didn't open the increasingly flirtatious love letters, urgent notices, so I never found out it resulted in a warrant. My friends wouldn't know what to think. Story 13. I would think I had finally been seen eating a handful of grapes at Food Lion or Walmart, and the federal agents had been sent to my home to collect that 40 cents worth of low-quality grapes they both sell. That's what I would immediately think. Story 14. My partner and I were out with friends having dinner and drinks with quite a happy buzz as we walked back to the hotel, hand in hand, when multiple police cars surrounded us. They threw my boyfriend on the back of the police car while another lady officer pulled me aside and asked me if he was physically abusing me and if I was safe now. I kept saying no, and she kept asking me to blink twice if I was in danger. Naturally, we were both so overwhelmed, as he has never once laid a hand on me despite how often I asked him to spank me. The night ended with him being taken into police custody and our parents being called. It ended up being a domestic dispute call at the apartment we happened to be walking by, but my parents didn't even skip a beat thinking he was beating me. Story 15. My mother would think I had done methamphetamine or something similar. It runs in the family. My friend would think I did some insurance fraud, robbery, or illegal gambling. Story 16. Likely traffic violations. I'm not a bad driver, but there's a speed trap right around the corner from where I live, and a speed camera appears here almost once a week. It would be easy to get heaps of speeding tickets without realizing it and then having the police show up to arrest me before receiving any tickets. Story 17. Single-handedly invaded Russia and eliminated every single bad actor hurting Europe and their people through corruption, large or small. Furthermore, they dragged down the world's government by subversive warfare through disinformation campaigns and inciting civil unrest within the United States and Europe, including Ukraine. Bonus. Also charged with dictating by fear to each and every one of those bad people until the end of time because I told them I would be back if they made even the slightest mistake again. People need incentives, and I am glad to have provided them with all the possibilities of redemption. Story 18. Probably playing online poker for money in Washington state, where online gambling is a Class B felony, just like second-degree rape and vehicular homicide. Oddly enough, the legislature passed the bill making it a felony almost unanimously, completely unrelated to all of the campaign contributions they received from card room owners, Native American casino companies, and the interstate lottery companies like Powerball and Mega Millions. Nothing to see here, citizen. Move along. Story 19. If I am getting arrested without being told why, pretty much everyone I know is going to assume it is a rude police officer on a power trip instead of something I actually did. Story 20. A family friend works in the police. He was asked by his wife to come to our place and pick up some Christmas gifts. As they arrived, they parked their police car halfway in our driveway, blocking it. While our friend walked to the door, his colleague, for some reason, exited the car with the door open and was just standing outside the car as if he was ready to take cover behind the car and door. At first, I didn't really think any of it until I saw several neighbors staring and pointing at our house. Story 21. They would assume I just have very bad luck and am being confused for someone else, laughing out loud. No one has witnessed my curse as much as them. Example. Supposed to visit family for Christmas? Husband's passport delayed, so I decide to try and go alone. But the train track had a mudslide that shut it down and stopped service that day. Like, okay, universe, I get it. Thank you for coming to my stone talk. Story 22. Most likely said something slightly offensive to the wrong person. I do have a tendency to make bad jokes, though the most extreme ones are for home, making my family think I am like that everywhere. Story 23. They would probably think it was a mix-up. Either that or that I got into drugs because there have been enough addicts and dysfunctional alcoholics in my family already. I think I am one of the few people in the family who never developed any sort of habit except being an ex-smoker, actually. Story 24. Oh no, I work with children. I'm not a violent person, pretty good at following the rules, no shady investments, don't have a license, so it couldn't be an ungodly amount of trafficking offenses, and no gang affiliations. I'm in trouble. Story 25. Hacking. I don't know how to hack, but my family is really bad with computers, so as far as they are concerned, basic knowledge about computers means I probably know how to hack. Story 26. Forgot to pay some type of ticket or didn't show up for jury duty. My attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is so off the rails nobody would be surprised if I forgot something serious. Story 27. I remake old guns that serve no purpose other than the idea that I played video games with them and wanted one. Once I made one, I realized I was good at it. So if I wanted a PPSH 41, I'd make one in semi-auto. So probably along those lines. Story 28. They would have no idea and assume it was a mistake. Every one of them would remind me to start being quiet and continue being quiet until I'm home. Do not talk to the police, especially if you are under arrest, but it's a good rule in general. Story 29. This may not be exactly the same thing, but I was literally going to write this to get it off my chest in a different post because it's been tormenting me lately, and I need to talk about it. Since this popped up, I will share it here. So, I was minding my own business many years ago, getting a coffee at one of the cafes I frequented. I had the day's events of work on my mind, so I was a bit preoccupied with the usual running through the day planner, reviewing appointments I had, and planning how I was going to approach the meeting later that day. Out of nowhere, a boy, maybe 2 to 3 years old, grabbed hold of my leg looking absolutely terrified and crying. He was begging me, "Don't let them take me. I don't want to go back. Please help me." He was an East Asian-looking boy, It wasn't more than a few moments later when I saw a woman in a lab coat and a man in a suit and tie, not Asian, enter the cafe and go straight for the boy. They looked rather upset at the boy and began scolding him for running off like he did and said the streets were a dangerous place, threatening him with punishments for his bad behavior. The boy refused to let go of my leg, clinging on with far more strength than I would ever suspect a boy of that size to have. He looked maybe 25 to 30 pounds at most, and while at the time I didn't know it, after having a daughter later on in life, I realized this was not normal kid strength. This seemed more like fight for your life strength. I asked them what was going on, and the lady in her 30s, maybe early 40s, replied something to the effect of, "This little rascal keeps trying to escape," and began trying to pry him off me, to which he began screaming at the top of his lungs. At this point, I was completely confused and bewildered as it was causing quite a bit of a scene in the cafe. People around were looking at me and the boy, so in that moment, I kind of tried to kick the boy off as I was unsure of what else to do. After a few moments of screaming and battling with him, the woman and man were eventually able to wriggle him off me, and the man carried him away while the woman apologized to me for all the trouble this had caused. When I asked who she was and where they came from, she just said something like, "We're at the daycare down the street, and his parents will kill us if anything were to happen to him." I just nodded and accepted the face value story, and then she abruptly apologized again and left. I've put it out of my mind for years, but now, in hindsight, I have a gut-wrenching feeling about the entire thing. Not only because I know in that neighborhood there were no daycare services at all, but it was also very nearby a psychiatric hospital with a well-known shady history. I'll leave it at that. I constantly wonder if I had been given the chance to save this little boy from something truly horrifying, but because of my distraction with completely meaningless and ultimately pointless tasks I had in front of me, I completely missed it. I have no idea what happened. I never saw any of them again, but I do hope to God it really was the story of him running from a daycare and looking for his parents and the caretakers were trying to chase him down. If not, however, I can only express how guilty I feel for not doing something in the moment when I could sense something didn't quite feel right. If you're out there, kid, I hope you're okay. Story 30. People assume I would either be a serial killer or commit a mass murder, as I generally don't get upset about things while not being super happy and friendly. Little do they know the real reason would be my multi-state littering obsession. 35 states so far, Canada and Mexico. I am planning to litter my way across Europe, but I got a tip-off that the International Criminal Police Organization may be closing in on me. Story 31. Probably a serial killer. I'm a doctor, and sometimes I say disturbing stuff like, I know I'm capable of genocide. I think most of us are or would be. It's a good thing I'm not in charge of policy. Imagine if I got frustrated and pissed off. Story 32. Either hacked into a site I should not have, or severely battered an animal abuser with my crutches. Most likely the latter rather than the former since my brain is so addled now, I can barely recall much from my computer days. Story 33. Everyone would be dumbfounded and have absolutely no theory aside from drugs, maybe, I guess. I'm a goody two-shoes but do partake in the illicit substances on occasion. Story 34. Whatever they thought I had done, my grandmothers would be busy creating an alibi for me and getting their lawyers involved. My favorite aunt would be counseling me not to say anything until my lawyer arrived. My cousins would be pretty intimidating to the policeman trying to arrest me, and my mother would be shouting, "I told you to burn the evidence," at her husband, all while my sister would be preparing to confront a few officers. As for the crime, murder, it's always murder. After all, I know how to get away with it. Story 35. They would probably think being gay was illegal again. In the United States, I am sorry to all who have to suffer in this cruel world, and I am wishing you all the best. Story 36. Family would think hacking or something to do with computer crimes. Friends would think either something with explosives or stealing classified documents. The truth is my life is nowhere near that exciting, and they just have the wrong guy.